now you're, all right. I'd like to call our Finance and Audit meeting for November 9th, 2023 to order at 8:30 a.m. We have Mr. Smith is missing and Kelly is calling in. Otherwise, all the members are here. I'll entertain a motion to allow Kelly to come remotely. Teresa, Carolyn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Welcome, Kelly. We have minutes for approval. I'll entertain a motion. So Brian, Teresa, any questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We are on to public comments. I don't see anyone from the public. Anyone? Nope. Member comments?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Terry.
I am just very encouraged by the work that the Sheriff's Department has done with the innovative solution to utilizing our available resources and trained staff, and with the potential to generate the revenue for the county. Well done for both Sheriff's Departments, and just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Anything else? Terry, anything else? Okay, anyone else? Okay, we're on to routine consent agenda. Items to be removed. I would like 12.
Yes.
Anyone else?
It's Kelly. I have to abstain from 7.1, please.
Okay. Okay, if not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve items 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Teresa, Brian. We'll go to vote. Brian?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. 7.1, I'll entertain a motion. Teresa and Brian, we'll go to vote. Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Abstain.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Motion carries. We are on to item 7.12. I'll entertain a motion. Terry and Teresa. You can stay right there if you want, or you can come up to the table, either way. Yeah, we're on your agenda.
Oh, you're on us?
We gotta talk sidebar. I don't vote.
I told this is gonna be a long meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I being too efficient?
You are actually.
That was funny.
Okay, so,
All right.
I pulled this and I know Terry pulled it also. So there wasn't any discussion at Law and Justice, which I was hoping there was, but it didn't even come off their consent agenda. So I'm wondering if you can fill me in at least, because I'm a little unknowledgeable. I read, what was in the packet and everything. So I agree with Terry. I think this is a great idea. I think this is something that will help both counties. But so I know Lake County didn't move it forward on their agenda. They postponed it a little bit. So do you know any reasons why that happened?
Sandy probably can talk more about that. I know that Sandy had a meeting, I think, with Peter. I don't remember how long ago that was. On that Friday afternoon.
End of October.
Yeah, and that's, so, I try to stay out of what happens once we, get with the contract, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
I hear
at the
you.
end of the day, Lake County had reached out to us and wanted to talk more about it. We met with them 3 months ago now.
We've been meeting with them and talking with them pretty consistently.
Yep.
So my counterpart over there, who does the same thing as I do, we've been working with our state's attorney's office on a contract since the meetings with the two sheriff's offices, command staff started. So we've been kind of going back and forth on the contract.
Yep.
So we were getting closer to putting it forward. They wanted this to go, the sheriff's office over there wanted this to go pretty quick because they're having some major staffing issues.
Yeah, so, and actually, almost to the point, and this just isn't us helping out Lake County Sheriff's Office, this is actually helping out all of Lake County's local law enforcement as well. So Lake County is in such a bad spot right now that they have asked all of their local law enforcement agencies, as it relates to the no cash bail, not to bring individuals that have been detained and are set to go to their first appearance court. They're asking those local law enforcement agencies to sit on those individuals, bring them to the court, and if they've been deemed by the justice system that they will be detained until their next court hearing, then Lake County will take them. I talked to a couple chiefs of very small agencies who run one car. That means that the one officer that they have has to sit with that individual in their local lockup until the next day of court, which means that they don't have law enforcement to cover the road. So for me, you know, it may sound not genuine, but I'm gonna tell you, the money is great, whatever, that's, you know, one of the things I do. The reality is we can't have people sitting on detainees waiting for trial and not patrolling the road, even if it isn't my county. That just doesn't fit what we're trying to do here. So when we started really talking about what does this really mean for law enforcement, that's the stuff that kind of makes my blood boil and makes me sick to my stomach that we can't do things. And that's where, you know, I kind of get emotional about this. I want to get this moving and get this going because, like I said, the money is an additional benefit that this county could see. It's not a guarantee because we don't know what it really looks like. But the reality is, you know, what we're supposed to be doing, this is where we need to be going with it. And I think that's really what we wanted to try to get this thing moving and get to a point where we can offset their population. Hopefully they can start bringing in and helping out their local PDs and you know, move forward with that process.
So they were ready to move forward. We had planned it, we were gonna move forward at the same time, and then they reached out to us kind of in a panic saying, I don't know what happened, but we're not moving it forward because there was communication from McHenry County saying, we're gonna put this off a month. So that's really, my understanding is the only reason why it didn't make the agenda. And then there was other discussion that the chairman over there had some questions, but we had gotten, I feel like we had gotten all those questions. We worked with their state's attorney directly. We worked with their county administrator who had questions. Sandra had questions, and all of those were addressed in the contract. So I know that there's discussion on, you know, why are we moving this forward if they're holding off a month on it? And I feel that it's a benefit to us because we have some big vendors that we need to talk to and prepare them for what's coming. We have talked to them, but this is showing our commitment to them saying, hey, this is a possibility. So, hey, WellPath, you do our inmate healthcare, you're gonna have to increase staffing. Hey, you know, Trinity, you do our food. There's gonna be more inmates here, so let's just put that on your horizon so you know, so that you can prepare. We've already bought, we call them textiles, the clothing and the bedding, that's stuff that we could use regardless. So if let's say they don't send over, this passes, and they don't send over 150, they send over 80, that's okay, because that stuff we can save and use with our own inmates. So we're already prepared for that.
And I talked to the sheriff last week. He was actually out of the country for a while as this was kind of going on. And I talked to him last week, and when he got back in town, I had heard kind of what Cindy was talking about. He called me, wanted to reassure that they are fully committed. The sheriff's office is fully committed to, you know, to this, because he recognized what kind of situation they're in a red zone right now, and they're in a spot where they're trying to do their best to get people, but we're also in a culture and climate where no one wants to do the job either. So it's tough to bring people in and get people hired, and they're down a heavy amount of staff in that facility. So they're a critical mass right now when it comes to that.
Yeah, I personally don't have an issue passing an IGA, and what's the worst that happens? It never gets utilized. I mean,
Right.
that's, I mean, you know, so be it. I mean, that's just what it is. But I just didn't know. I heard the same thing from Pete, that it was going to be a path that we're both converging together, and then I heard something got brakes put on. So I was just trying to understand.
The chair of the Lake County Board got a couple extra questions right as she was leaving for the Japan trip that Chairman Bueller went on, and she just said, no, we're not going to have law and government. It was supposed to be, I think, October 26th or 27th, the same day that we posted our law and government agenda, and just it's what it is. So My conversation with the Lake County Administration is they're gonna have this on the agenda at the end of November.
Okay. Can you speak to a little bit about the revenue side? So I know, so Lake County, I'm assuming, is opening up their hiring process to, try and get more sheriffs, but that could take who knows how long. And I'm assuming if they haven't been to school, they gotta go to school.
Yeah, so I mean, just for reference, we had we just had an exam for new hires for correctional officers. We had 70 applicants. Up to the test date, there were a couple applicants that dropped off, so I think we're about 65. 16 people showed up for the test. 11 people passed with 2 laterals, so we had 13 eligible candidates. We just went through that. It's
bad.
And I guarantee you, those 11 people are gonna be the same 11 people that are amongst everyone's list right now. So we're fighting for people amongst each other. We are very fortunate to be better staffed and better situated. I think a lot of it has to do with the environment that we've created here at the Sheriff's Office, not to discredit any other agencies, but I think we do a really good job of training, pay, and taking care of our employees here, so I think we're in a different situation. But the reality is to be able to find people to do this job, you have to do one of two things. You have to lower your standard, or you have to kind of beg, borrow, and steal from other agencies and other offices to get people to lateral over. And, it's difficult. So I don't have a magic wand, and I just want to remind everyone that this is I think the contract's awesome. I think it's going to be great. There's no guarantees to it. I'm hoping that we can fulfill it to its maximum ability. I just don't want to be the one responsible for whatever the board, as we agree to get through this contract. If we end up with 10 inmates and doesn't get to the maximum point, I don't want to be looked at as the one that wasn't able to fulfill that void that was made, or thought that we were going to use money for, received. We all read the article that was thrown out there. At a maximum of, whatever they quoted that as, over $5 million of revenue. Would I love to be able to bring that? I would love to be able to bring that. I can't guarantee that at all, though. So, I mean, I don't want the board to look at the sheriff's office and say, yep, we recognize that you guys are gonna be able to fill this void. That's awesome. Terry, I appreciate the kind words. We're trying to do our best that we possibly can to be good stewards of the county and try to offset costs. But if it comes back and it's $1 million, I don't want everyone to come back to the sheriff's office and say, congratulations, where's that $4 million hole that you were supposed to fill? So I understand the optics that you guys have to deal with. My goal is to offset and bring in as many as we possibly can that we can house with the staff that we have, with the resources that we have, and the ability that we can do with with Lake County Sheriff's Office. Now, I will say that I am 100% confident that we set a cap number, I think we did, cap of 150. I'm confident that I can bring in 150 and my resources, I can do it. So it's kind of me talking on both sides of my mouth. But the reality is I just want you all, I want to be transparent that I don't want to be looked at as the saving grace. I hope I am, because it's really great. We can talk about our staff and do all that, but I just, I want to be transparent with everyone. My job is to do what I think we need to be doing, not just for our community, but for other communities as well. I think we can do it, and that's really where we're at with it.
So for us, it takes about 3 to 6 months to onboard someone. Because I think you're asking about.
Lateral versus having to go to school and.
Correct.
Yeah.
My understanding, and I don't have an exact number, is they're down over 60 correction officers. So there's that. So it's gonna take them time to fill up. And then you have the Safety Act. So there's still, what is going on with this? What is this gonna look like? We've been holding steady at our average daily population.
160 about
160, but the thought and discussions are in about 3 months, all the notice to appears that don't appear are gonna come back through the system. So that's gonna push up again. And I think that was some of Lake County's concern was, why would we do this if the numbers in the jail are gonna fall and we don't need it in place? So I believe their sheriff is saying, put it in place, because if we need it, then it's there. And
it's a safety net. It's a safety net for them.
100%.
correct. The daily fee per inmate, more than covers healthcare, so they would fall, those inmates would fall under our healthcare. Lake County has WellPath, who's the same vendor as us, which makes it nice for communication reasons, but really these inmates are gonna fall under the same services that are provided to our inmates under that. Food is gonna be exactly the same, and then the miscellaneous stuff, including commissary, they'd fall right under our commissary, so that's where they can come in with their money. They put it into their commissary account so that they can purchase additional items and whatnot, and when they leave, they get a debit card with whatever they have left, and they go. And then there's transportation, so we had looked at once a day,
Yeah,
third shift early in the morning, moving people, so anyone who's coming over here will come over here, anyone who has court will be transported back, and it'll be a one trip a day.
and we changed, we used to have a late day shift. We changed our internal resources to be able to accommodate that, to add more people to the floor, to help out with some of the no cash bail mandates that are coming through, some of the stuff that we're responsible for, but also to offset transports, because that was part of the deal, was that we would be able to take individuals that needed to go to court, we would transport them to Lake County and then transport them back. And we had the resources and ability to do that, and I'm confident that we can, like Sandy said, that the contract more than covers, our needs on our end.
We don't have one empty floor. That was stated in the article that we're sitting on a whole empty floor, so that is not the case. There is a portion of a floor that is available, and we can certainly house their inmates on. We do not anticipate right at this moment hiring any additional staff. We do have 5 to 6 people on the radar for retiring this upcoming year, so that may be an issue. But even if we did, so we estimate, we've used these numbers before, especially when we're talking about the ICE contract, that it's about $100,000 a year for one person. So if we needed to hire 3 or 4 individuals, then that would be taken into account money-wise.
And that's something that we agreed that, should this go through, we aren't gonna flip the switch and bring 150 people in right away. Obviously, there'd be an integration period, and, how we can make sure that we are not exhausting all of our resources on our end, just so we can fulfill the, a contract or whatever. So like Sandy said, I think there will be some, we'll be learning as we go through this. And then we'll kind of go from there.
So when we had so we're at like 150. So let's say we stay at that and we take 150 from Lake County. That puts us right where we were, even less than where we were with the ICE contract. With the same number of staff.
Right.
So this is not, well, we have 6 positions, I think, that are on the roster and unfunded. But I mean, we're right there as far as staffing wise. So this is a very doable, and regardless of today, it would, you guys are always welcome to come, and we can literally walk you in there and show you this is what it's gonna look like and where they are and how that blends in with how our current staffing is worked, because it's hard to understand staffing in an environment like the jail.
Hey, one more question. So, and if you can't, I don't want to ask questions that would compromise any of the operations over there, I guess.
Sure.
But are you planning on, I don't want to say segregating, but are you planning on integrating?
No.
Okay.
They'd be segregated.
Okay.
And that may be part of, I know Sandy said we're not really gonna be asking for more staff, but we might need to because of that. I think there's a couple of layers that, that go along with it. I think it's prudent of us. It's easier for, assuring that individuals are, when it's time to transport, it's easy to move certain individuals from a certain section over to, ready to be transported. But there's also classifications that we have to deal with as well. So one of the good things about the contract is we have a right to refuse some of these individuals. So if they want to send us, their biggest troublemakers, we can say, hey, we're bringing them back to you tomorrow. And we're not going to house them. But the other part is, there's certain classifications within its own, area section. So Lake County's inmates are going to be coming to us. There may be a couple where they're kept separate, so we have to figure out how we can move them amongst a section so that they are, still being safely housed, but, you know, we're upholding our end of the bargain on our classifications as well. We also didn't want to integrate Lake County with McHenry County because we don't know how kind of people may be talking, and I don't want to bring problems that I don't already have in this county to this county. So
Right.
we are able to do that, but like I said, that's why I want to see what, as we integrate this and move population and slowly, we can start saying, all right, here's where we're comfortable at doing this. We may need to be asking for, you know, funding of positions that we already have, but like Sandy said, I think we're on the horizon. So we got 2 retiring in December. I think we're gonna have 2 more retiring in the first quarter of next year. So we actually just met, we're gonna be putting some conditional offers out for those 11 individuals that we identified that could be hired to fill the openings that we have. But also, there's probably 4 more people next year that may be retiring. So I think we'll be very transparent on if we're trying to bring new people on and trying to maybe ask the board to fund some of those open positions. There will be people falling off, you know, later on in the year, so it may be kind of a wash at the end of the year if we realize that we didn't need that more staff. But I also don't want to end up in a position like Lake County's in, overpopulate, understaffed, and then I'm asking and mandating people to come back and work, you know, overtime or what have you. But still confident that we're not going to, you know, completely eliminate a revenue that would be coming in either. So it would be, you know, there still would be a revenue. I wouldn't be asking for 5.4 million dollars worth of resources to come in.
Well, so I'm separating the resolution with the accounting side of it. So I'm gonna kind of deal with the accounting side in Carrie's section
Sure.
as to not only how do we budget it and how do we account for it, but which isn't your issue, that's the other side. So
Sure. No, I
in her
appreciate that.
section, oh, did I not tell you that? Oh, sorry. I'd like to have the discussion again about how to put this into our system, integrate the revenue and potential expense if there is some. So.
We, some of you are new, so when we had ICE here, we do track all those revenues and there's reports that go out, and that's something that can be provided to the committees as well, so that it's upfront. I know that was an issue back then. So it's important to know this is a 12-month contract with the option to extend for another 12 months. So we're looking at 2 years here. So when the sheriff talked about possibly bringing on people, again, we know that there's gonna be people retiring through attrition. So that's something we can definitely keep our thumb on too as we move through this contract. And that's assuming worst case or best case.
Right, okay. Terry?
Yes, so there was a few things. I wanted to make a statement, nothing specifically directed to you until we get to number 3.
Okay.
But that by us going on ahead and putting this up for a vote on our agenda, it basically, for the Lake County administrators and officials, they're gonna be encouraged by our support, and we're gonna be signaling that we're collaborative and that we're concerned about the health and safety of all of our communities with the resources that we have. And I think that's very important at such a time as this, because all of us are trying to deal with what has been mandated by the state of Illinois in the catch and release program. Or there's another name for it.
No cash bail.
No cash bail, yes, catch and release. And then additionally, out of respect for our counterparts on the Law and Governance Committee, they moved this forward, this resolution forward, and asked that it be presented to the COW. And we do not want to disrespect the wisdom and discernment of their work product. So I think that's very important that we do go ahead and put this on the agenda. But then also, your comment, Rod, about the saving grace. The budget right now with no new growth and 0 CPI increase, we still have understated revenues in the area of interest, in the area of marijuana revenue, and then possible other exactly. The potential for the mental health board sales tax. So there's a number of things there, but then also on the expense side, on the operating side, we have very comfortable budgets set for things like headcount, our general funds being in excess of what would be considered conservative, increasing our reserves at a lower rate, and then also too, just going through that the board itself has to do its work over the next year, auditing operations and seeing, what is of value to the taxpayers of McHenry County. So don't feel that pressure. This is just a great job and another revenue stream for the county. So it is what it is, and it's just very much appreciated. So I would encourage that we definitely move this to the committee of the whole with our endorsement.
Do you have anything else? Terry, do you have anything else? Okay. Other committee members? Brian?
2 questions, please. I'd like to get a better handle on the time frame here that we're discussing. So the idea then from Pete is that Lake County would consider this at the end of November then. And let's say that we consider it, it goes through, Lake County goes through, then what is the time frame? Rob, you mentioned that you want to kind of bring these in gradually. You don't necessarily want to have a flood all at one time. What is the projected time frame?
I think first part of January, ideally, if they, I don't know what their
So
agenda
it's gonna go
looks
to their
like.
county board in December, and so their final approval is gonna be right before the holidays, so we're not going to.
Yeah, it'll be shortly after, second week of January or something like that, but I wanna be aggressive when that goes out. We still work on the holidays, it's not like we take the
Right.
holidays off, so, there's still stuff that we can work on, that we can align, and I have a feeling once that train starts moving, we will start working behind the scenes and start lining stuff up so that, once things are signed and everyone's agreed upon, I'm not gonna waste any time, there's no reason to. Like I said, just because it's the holidays doesn't mean that we don't already work, so. But I would anticipate, first portion of January, best case scenario.
And what is the time frame then for kind of onloading? What would be the schedule here? Is it going to be like, it'll take 3 months before you decide to have the potential? If the potential is 150, it's going to take 3 months for you to kind of upload that many individuals, or?
I wish I had a magic wand, I don't really know. I think the idea was to bring it on in thirds, bring on 50 initially to get that settled, and then try to get in our groove on how does it mean when we have people going to court, how do we create that transport, how do we bring people over, how long does it take to keep them booked? There'll be some growing pains. I think 3 months is probably a good estimate of once we start really recognizing how we're able to get this going. That's probably a conservative number.
Okay. And then you believe that our vendors are able to ramp up pretty quickly and they could accommodate the increases you're planning for this already, but you believe that they can meet that additional demand?
I think our vendors are probably a little nervous, just like anyone else, but we have been in front of them. It's not like they haven't known about it. They're preparing for it as well. There may be some difficulties. The healthcare world is having just the same struggles that we are in hiring people. But I also think that if we run into a situation where, like Sandy said, WellPath is Lake County's healthcare provider. They're already providing for the number of people, so maybe WellPath can bring some of their staff over to us to offset some of those, because they're already supporting that amount of population. So we can try to figure that out and creatively help and work on that. But at no point in time do I think that we're going to put anyone in a position not to succeed in this. And that's part of the other part of bringing in, small increments of people so that we can assure that the ones that we are bringing in, we're bringing in at the expectation of what we provide to our inmates. We don't want to become an agency where we can't provide everything that we promise to provide people.
Our healthcare provider has not reduced staff due to this Safety Act because, again, we don't know what's going to happen over the next 6 to 8 months, and healthcare has the same recruiting issues that law enforcement does too. So they're at a comfortable place right now. They will have to, they bring in about 4 FTEs for the Lake County folks. And we've been talking to them this whole time, so.
You kind of segued to my next question, actually, and that is, you referenced the fact that we don't really know what's going to happen with the Safety Act. And so there's going to be a cycle around, as you're suggesting, with those who don't report to court in about 3 months period of time. So here we're going to have this confluence, if you will, of that plus the additional maximization, if you will, in 3 months, let's say. So is that an overload in your mind? Or, I mean, you've kept assuring us that the resources are there. I trust that completely. But do you believe that there's any possibility that the confluence of those two things might overload?
I think our priority would be to assure that we can house the inmates that we're responsible for in McHenry County. Now, if we start seeing an influx and we go from a McHenry County population of 150, 160 to 250, well, obviously I'm gonna have to have a conversation with Lake County and saying, listen, we have an influx of individuals. I'm not gonna put myself in critical mass as well. But I think that's actually a conversation that throughout the state, Illinois sheriffs are having. That's not gonna be unique to us because everyone's gonna experience the same thing. And while the volume of people may look different, I think the percentages are gonna be the same. We're all gonna be dealing with that type of issue. And I think there's a lot of conversations that are gonna spark because of that. So, I mean, our focus, our primary focus is on McHenry County, the population of McHenry County, and the McHenry County's responsibilities. That's why I said that 150 is not necessarily a guarantee. But I'm not gonna put ourselves in a position where we can't handle, we're biting off more than we can chew.
I appreciate that very much, and I think that I want you to know up front that I'm incredibly impressed by the depth and breadth of the review that you all have gone through in terms of looking at this and evaluating our resources and the capacity that we have. So I'm very, very grateful you thought of everything, the transport back and forth, all those types of things. And I support this. I agree with my colleague, Terry, that this is something that we need to move forward. I agree for all the reasons you stated is the right thing to do. And I say that beyond even the financial aspect. It's the right thing for us to do. My concern is the fact that we get to a point where we believe that we're at full capacity, if you will. We are all throughout the state looking at employee concerns, and the need is going to continue to increase. Let's not kid ourselves with regards to employees that are going to be necessary for the operations. And I'm wondering how the broader, not just McHenry County, but the broader group of correctional officers is going to be replenished in order to be able to meet the demand that we think is this tide that's kind of rolling in. And so I don't want to get too far afield from what the Finance Committee should be discussing, but that seems to me to be a very real concern. And
It's a huge concern.
yes, and so I wonder about the process that we go through for recruiting and bringing individuals in. You said you just went through a testing. You had a whole host of folks that kind of signed up and then all of a sudden didn't show up. That's pretty typical in the employment field today. From what I'm understanding, Terry, you're much more familiar with this than I am, but that's a pretty typical situation. How are we changing our approach? Are we testing every month? Are we going to test every 2 weeks? What are we doing to meet that for, I know that we're fine now, but I'm looking at the future.
Well, and I am too, and I'll say that I'm just in my first year.
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about is things that I don't sleep at night trying to figure out what we're gonna do. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, I'm confident that we will be able to bring people into this facility because of what we do. I think yesterday, as you were part of, bringing in a regional training center is something that other counties don't do. I think that through this contract, we may see other correctional officers that say, man, McHenry County's got it really, really good. They have a good gig going. They pay really well. Their facility's pretty nice. I may want to lateral over there. And I don't want to steal, like we talked about, we're just stealing from other agencies or whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm confident in what we do in this county. I'm confident in myself. I'm confident in the staff that I'm able to work with, that we can provide a space that people are going to want to work at. And, at the end of the day, as stupid as it sounds, that's what people elected me for, was to be able to do that. And, I like that challenge. I think that we are going to change some things. We've talked about recruitment bonuses for our staff for, talking to people and bringing people in.
We're looking at a lot of other avenues, because right now the county really only posts it on the website and uses Indeed. So we've got to go beyond that. And I've talked to the sheriff about, well, he's still kind of young, but us oldies don't use social media the way we should. But obviously there's so many other ways of recruiting, and I told him, like, my niece, her whole interview for her big company that she works for was like through Snap. It was the last interview that she did in person. And I'm like, well, how does that even work? I have no idea. So kind of as a side project, we're gonna look into different programs and even reminding them to show up for the test. Our website doesn't do that, Indeed doesn't do that. We certainly don't have time to call people. Say, don't forget, your testing for correctional officer for McHenry County is on Saturday at 8. Just simple things that maybe we can implement to increase our pool of candidates.
So finally, again, thank you. But the testing, are you going to increase the frequency of testing? Are you going to
There's different methods that we've been looking at and trying to figure out how we can do that better, whether it's just an open enrollment, and then, here are the dates that we allocate testing. The problem is we have to utilize our resources for testing as well. Sure. So we have to balance that.
And finding space.
Right.
Well,
so, yes.
It used to be a lot harder. 200 people.
But yes, all of the above is what we're looking at, trying to figure that out. Historically, it was once a year that we would test. Now we're at twice a year. Now we probably would be going to quarterly. Or it may just be, as people come in, we just are able to pull 2 people off and test 2 people and interview them right away. I don't know what that really looks like, but I know that all of that is on the table.
And our people who go to the high schools talk about how it's very difficult to get people to pass tests. And that's
Written, yeah.
very unfortunate, like
Physical
8th grade math.
And physical too, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yep.
So
And we're also working with our military too. I think that's been another resource, getting with the recruiters to let individuals that, audibly want to serve our country, but when they come back, we have a job waiting for them as well, which I think is important.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll go to vote then. Carolyn?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Myself, yes? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, we're on to item 9.1, which is an older resolution. I'll entertain a motion. Teresa? Is there a second?
Second.
Carolyn? I don't know if there's questions. Is there questions by committee members? I just had one question, so if you want to come down here real quick. So I guess my question is what happens after this is done?
It's an excellent question. Don't have a crystal ball, but we're hoping either we're going to be looking at our own budget, right, how to continue this. There is, both on a national level and state level, a data modernization effort happening. So we're hoping that there's going to be dollars dedicated to moving in this direction, or even potentially that the state might cover these costs.
Sorry. Okay.
So because it is something that public health has identified as a gap, it came up a lot throughout the pandemic. So there are efforts, the CDC has launched a data modernization project. So it is very possible that there are going to be dollars. Otherwise, I think we feel it is that important that we will look into our own budget of how we would support this.
Okay. So the only other question I have is for Carrie. So how are we, if this is a 5-year agreement, how are we expending this within our time frame?
For ARPA?
Yep.
Well, in the
So-
contract, so again, and if for some reason we have to rethink this, we can certainly have that discussion. But the way the contract's written now is that year 4 and 5 are paid for in 2026.
Okay.
I suppose that is probably a Bronner
Yeah.
question that we need to double check that is. I may have made an assumption that had already been done, but obviously that's an important question. Can we pay beyond 2026 for a contract? I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. If we could, I don't mind moving this forward, but.
Yeah, obviously that's a really important detail.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And forgive me, I may have missed something. What is public-facing data software? What exactly is this doing?
So, and maybe I can send out a link to show you, but they're essentially, so our COVID dashboards now are public-facing, right? It's really, the use of the word dashboard is a place where you see visualizations of the data. So for example, it might look like a map of McHenry County that you can zoom in, you hover over, the data that's relevant for that area in the county is going to pop up. You can select different data to look at, whether that's community health information from our community health assessment and improvement plan, or STI rates, opioid data. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there's a lot of examples out there, and if you want me to send them to you in an email, I'd be happy to do that so you can see what it looks like. But it's a very dynamic program and allows people to go seek the information that they want.
And people are signing releases for their data to be a part of this? I mean, I know.
So this is not,
specific
no, this is not
individual.
individual. You can't link this information individually.
Well, true, but it's taking we're getting information from, we don't know who the individual is, but we know what's going on in that area.
So this is all information that as a local health department, we're already doing the surveillance, the tracking, it's just going to be visually available to you. So there's nothing really that changes in terms of how we collect the data, how we report the data, but it's another level of interaction with the data that we can't do without the technology.
So let me be specific. So if we had a hepatitis A outbreak, people would be able to go to this and see that that was happening in our county? And
I don't know that we would necessarily be doing outbreak data. This is going to be trends over time.
Okay.
So changes over time, not necessarily specifically that in this moment or over the last month or something, there was a cluster of something happening. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then what?
Because we don't put any identifier, we have to, restrict what we can show if it's in any way identifiable.
Okay. What would be the lag time on what's happening, the data that's collected, and then when it is available to the public?
That's a good question. I can't answer it directly, but I believe it is routine, whether it's daily or weekly, regular updates so that information is as up to date as possible.
Okay, great. Oh, one more question. For example, during COVID, there were a lot of numbers thrown out that in retrospect weren't actually COVID-related things. Will we be able to, or would the public be able to see what criteria was used for defining what was being reported so that they could have,
So I believe like with the COVID information we had those definitions. You have to remember that much of the data we have is provisional. So it takes the state a long time to finalize that data. So it is possible that numbers will change over time.
Well, for example, the current definition, like if people had the numbers and then they understood what is the current definition that's being used to get, that's all. I think that's fair. We'd have things, information like that.
Again, a
and
good
a small
question that like
component.
our EPI team, those are the data specialists that do the surveillance, that do the analysis. Typically when we put out our reports, so we do have written reports, and those reports say how that data, what it means, right? It has definitions, it has descriptive information to help the public understand what are we talking about. So I would assume, but I haven't, we haven't seen the final format, that same type of information would be communicated through this vehicle in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you. I ask because it is sensitive and it is public, and so I just want to make sure that we have a clear understanding.
Yep, and the state.
And I love the transparency, so I think it's great. So thank you.
Brian?
This has to do with the bidding process. I know that we had 3 potential bidders that came out. One was not timely, and so that was not really considered. But there's a significant difference between the 2 bids that were presented, and I understand that the review did suggest that we go with this much higher bid, almost 50% higher, if you will, 100% higher. But the concern that I have is this something that is so timely that we should not rebid this, or do you not believe that there would be additional bidders out there, or what are your thoughts on that?
So our staff put together the criteria
Yes.
for, because they have the expertise on that. So my understanding is that this particular vendor, right, allows for some flexibility and capabilities that the other vendor couldn't provide. So one piece of that is that the other vendor controlled the data and the time, and there would be delays in keeping it updated. For this vendor, we have that control and can update and add dashboards. We wouldn't be able to do that with the other vendor. Other regional partners use this, and this may be a platform, again, that there's advocacy to potentially choose this platform. They are local to Illinois as well. And it saves staff time. I couldn't say about the other vendor whether or not, but they reviewed those for the capabilities and the flexibility so that we would be able to, utilize it to its full capacity. And I don't know honestly how many vendors are out there that do this type of work. There's definitely a range. My understanding is there are others that are far more expensive than even this platform.
So you don't believe that there's benefit to rebid this particular contract?
Not that has been communicated to me.
And timing-wise, when is it that you hope to have this up and working, as it were?
Well, we are trying to obligate all of those ARPA projects. So the way the contract reads, we were going to hit the ground running. The staff, that communication of how the data gets uploaded with the vendor, I would think, early in the new year is what we were hoping for.
Thank you. I share the chair's concern about the ARPA funds and the distribution of those ARPA funds. I would like to have some greater clarification on that, and perhaps Carrie can provide that, but it is a concern. But in terms of the programming, I have no problems with the programming at all. I just don't know how or if we should be committing ourselves with regards to ARPA funds on this right now. I'm not sure that's realistic. So that's my concern.
And I have a question that you just brought up. This would have gone through Adam for the RFP process, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
That's correct.
Do you have any comments to make on the difference in the quotes and?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Come on down.
Sorry. To Dr. Sager's question, I think what you see is because of the way the responses came in, there are a few other vendors that could do this, but I think you see from the responses that they're all over the place. And I think one of the points that we need to make of the difference in the cost is because the lower vendor was going to have us make changes to our website. So there was going to be work on staff side, so they didn't have to do as much. This one will do a lot more. It's a lot more public facing. It's a lot more than controlled by the health department. But in terms of rebidding, I'm not sure you're gonna see much difference. Just by then, and I understand it's just my opinion, but that would be my 2 cents for that.
Anything else? Okay, we'll go.
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, yep, go ahead.
Sorry. So Melissa, you spoke at Public Health about this. And could you explain a little bit what, I mean, you touched on a little bit. You said there are some other counties that are using this database, and how much other communities and other departments need the information you're gathering and putting out there. So could you explain that a little bit?
Well, so we know that Lake County and Cook County are using this platform, and those would probably be the links that I would share if people want to see what it looks like. I think what I said was, we had started a data sharing project before COVID, that there's, we have community members that try to access our information and use our data, right, to support their mission, their vision for their organization. I'm not sure that's your question. I mean, what I'm hearing around the table is that people support conceptually this idea. I also had said that for example, transportation. They sit on our community health assessment groups, and there's a lot of data there about access and transportation that we can use. And so potentially, we could have other departments having forward-facing data within the county. We haven't explored that fully yet, but that is something that we could certainly do.
Thank you. And you also said too that you hope that the state goes to this platform, which would make data sharing much easier.
Right, because there is a lot of movement and advocacy around data modernization. So as that gets ramped up, the hope would be that there would be funding for ongoing support. We did give an example of during the pandemic, what we used for contact tracing, right? Everybody was sort of on their own initially, and then the state entered into a contract for Salesforce, which is where all that information could come in. So everybody was using a uniform program, and then they can transfer cases. And so that would be a similar idea. We can't say for certain that we'll get there with this, but that is the hope. Because the public is really interested in having the access, having that transparency, being able to look at the information easily.
Thank you. Yep. And we all agree about the concern about using COVID funds and what's going to happen after 5 years, but I think it's a worthwhile project, so thank you.
Go ahead, Karen.
So we would be able to get an answer to the concern before we have to vote on it, I would assume.
Oh, about the ARPA?
Carrie Johnson just sent an email to Bronner.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll have something by the end of the day.
Okay.
If you do get something, if you want to just send it out to the committee at least, so that the committee knows what's going on. Okay, if not, we'll go to vote then. Terry?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. We are on to item 10.1.
Good morning. For the record, Scott Harbin, Deputy County Administrator.
And Joe Terrio, County Coordinator.
Yesterday, we spoke to Administrative Services Committee on the need for consolidated election center. Joe can tell you about the logistical challenges he has every year with running the election, and as they put more mandates onto his plate, it only gets a little bit more difficult, and that translates into a significant impact onto this building, and those who've been on the county board for a while know how challenging that gets for us just to run our operations for those months preceding an election and then thereafter. So working with the county clerk, we've been looking for a solution to that problem, and that solution would be really consolidating the election operations into a single space. We've looked at a few options in the city of Woodstock, because it is essential, obviously, to the county and to the operations. Really, we are looking at and would like to pursue the former Aldi building and on 47. This is the one next to near the Secretary of State's office. And we've talked to the property owner and the broker and the city of Woodstock about utilizing that space, about 16,500 square feet for this purpose. It'll be very well suited, centrally located, good visibility, good access. That's what we wanted to talk to you about. Administrative Services had to provide some general support for the concept, and we're just working on the preliminaries right now and negotiating or seeing what it would look like for the property owner. But at a very high level, we're looking at about $400,000 per year. And that's, I'm going to say that's all in for the lease, for the CAM, for operating costs. Obviously, we would want to further analyze those numbers. There would be some build-out costs. The owner would be agreeable to about $165,000 of build-out costs for the interior. There's probably a remainder, based on our concept of how we would configure it, build walls and move things, about another $85,000 or so that the county would be responsible for under these conceptual negotiations. And that's where we sit. We don't want to get too much further without bringing this to the committee. We don't have anything for you to vote on today. We would anticipate if you would be agreeable to us pursuing it, we could be in place to have something next month. And if we do, that would give the county clerk ample opportunity to have that space built out and ready by June, which is his go time for the presidential election in November. So timing would work out very well. But we sit today with a concept. This concept would work very good both for the county clerk and for just the county as a whole, and I think just for the public of having a central location. So like I said, there's a cost to it. It's a new cost to the county. County administrator and the CFO and I have been working on different plans. We can present you with that option, and he can speak a little bit more to that. But it is doable, and I think at the end of the day, it would be a very good solution for the county as a whole. So with that, I just want to throw that concept on the table. We'd like to pursue this further, but I'd like to have some preliminary discussion. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who get elected to office, you may notice that this building gets busy around election time. And to the extent, and Terry and Teresa heard some of this yesterday, so pardon me for representing, but we've gone to the point now where we have to bring in storage containers and put them in the parking lot to house some of the things that we use for our elections. And that's obviously not optimal. There has been legislation that is pending and trends in vote by mail especially that would cause I hate to say a catastrophe, but something bordering on a catastrophe. Specifically, there's legislation, I don't know if it's still pending, it was as of a couple days ago, that would cause me to send a ballot to every person in the county. And there has been repeated and various forms of something called ranked choice voting, which without getting into the details, will make our ballots multiple pages and consequently will cause that much more in terms of storage and handling and that sort of thing. On election day, it builds as we get close to election day, but on election day we have all of our offices occupied. We have these two conference rooms. We have the cafeteria, the two adjacent conference rooms, one of the 108 conference rooms, and then by the end of the day, we have the vestibule area and a good part of the first floor hallway that we occupy. We rely on the elevator, which is not very reliable, unfortunately. So we find ourselves in a situation where if we don't start thinking about what we see on the horizon coming, we're going to find ourselves in a really bad position at some point in the midst of an election, potentially scrambling to find a solution to this, because we've just run out of places to do our work in this building. Yes?
So out of this, you said 16,000 square feet, right?
16.5.
16.5. So how much of that is public facing versus private, or not say private, but your personal use for the
Yeah.
department?
So it's going to vary depending on the day. So on any day, there's going to be a front end. And if you've been to the Aldi, if you could imagine just generally, if you would walk in the door and about equal to where the cash registers were, you'll be able to walk into there. There'll be windows where you can look in and see what's going on, both to an open area that we'll use for training and as a polling place. And then also on the far end is our tabulation room, so you can watch the act of tabulating and that sort of thing. When it is during election season, that first area will be open to the public. They'll be able to come in and vote. They might come there to be trained. That's another challenge that we have, is finding space to train people. And then in that space, and we may leave that when we're not using it for either of those circumstances, we may leave that open to the public as well. And then there are windows to be able to look and observe the vote by mail processing as well. And then there's an area beyond that, which is plain warehouse, which won't be visible or open to the public. There's a break room, a couple bathrooms, and 2 office spaces. And that's it.
A lot of that space, it sounds like a lot of space, but right now, the basement of this building is filled with election-related materials. We have the Clem building, which is at the corner of 47 where that's filled with you call them toters.
Yes.
So there's a lot of logistics that need to go into it, a lot of storage needs that we already have in multiple locations. There's an opportunity, once you have all that consolidated, that frees up space in the Clem building for other county purposes. Joe had mentioned too, if you look behind this building, we've got pods that are filled with materials, which is less than ideal when you come into an election. If you can consolidate everything, you have a more secured location. So it just lends itself to a much better operation, and just and I think there is a cost savings that will translate back onto the county for not having all those other incidental costs. We, as I mentioned, the Clem building has, can be repurposed. One of the options that we could consider, and just as a conceptual, the Office of Specialty Courts right now is in the building at 400 Russell. We're paying about $38,000 a year in rent on that. That may be an opportunity, if we can end that and move that over to the Clem building. There'll be some reconfiguration needed. But I'm just throwing out ideas. There really actually are opportunities. If we have Joe consolidate everything, then we can now use our space a little bit more strategically.
With regards to the facility then that is being proposed, are you going to have somebody there kind of 100% of the time?
There's always work to be done. So yes, we'll have some number of people there all the time. And depending on how close we are to an election, that number will increase proportionally.
And so what's that proposed staffing?
It's current staffing, so it's not any different staffing, not any additional staffing. It's going to be 1 to 2 people at any given time. And that would probably grow, if we're doing training and vote by mail processing at the same time, we might bring, 10 people from our office over there. That's another reason why proximity is important, so that we can, as we do today, move people around easily and without a great deal of waste.
And so would you have one individual, I trust that even right now you have an individual who is predominantly responsible for this particular aspect of your departmental operations.
Right.
And so would those 2 or two individuals be housed there permanently, basically?
Permanently, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question I have is, you mentioned the questions of security of materials and that type of thing, and that this would help to be more secure.
Yes.
So we have a certain amount of security here within this building. Is there going to be an individual out there then for security, or that's not anticipated?
I haven't quite answered that question. I think we have a better opportunity to secure the area than we have here in a lot of different ways. And because it is all under one roof, we're not transporting things up, down floors, across buildings and that. I wouldn't put it out of the question, but I haven't come to a conclusion on that one just yet.
Thank you. Sure.
Carolyn?
I was just wondering, in addition to the annual cost, how much do you anticipate you would have to modify the interior of the building? And what kind of, I know it's early in the process, but, you know, in terms of remodeling costs?
At the new location, I think that was that 85?
Yeah, so
So you think that would- okay.
based on our conversations with the property owner, what we would need to do, there would be, the coolers, because it was a former grocery store, that all would need to be removed, and the walls would need to be built to house the mail sorting machine and offices, and so some reconfiguration would need to be done. All in, estimate based on the owner, and our preliminary plans, we're looking at about 250,000 or so. The owner would contribute 165,000 of that, so basically $10 per square foot towards that as a credit. And then the county would need to pick up the difference. And like I said, just conceptually, about $85,000 or so. And that's something that we could negotiating the lease could be just paid up front, or it could be baked into the lease and amortized over. I think if we go that route, the recommendation would just pay it, be done with it, and then and move on. But total 250, let's say, just based on preliminary drawings.
But the 165 was from?
The owner, correct. So then we would have that delta, the difference.
And it's the concept at this point is fairly austere, really. I mean, it's concrete floors. There may be some carpet in the offices, linoleum in the break room and the bathrooms, and really it's mostly 3 big rooms.
Joe's not asking for much, I can
No,
assure you of
yeah.
that.
And to give you, if you wish to compare, DuPage a couple years ago saw a similar sort of need, and they now occupy a very substantial warehouse. They're obviously bigger than us, so that makes sense, but I mean, it's outfitted with forklifts and the whole 9 yards. Kendall County, which is smaller than us, about half the size, they are in the throes of building I think it's 9,600 square foot building for the clerk for similar purposes and because of similar pressures.
Sure.
I know some of these things we discussed yesterday, but, and I am by no means an expert in commercial real estate, but a little bit familiar with the Crystal Lake market. And I know that right now, a triple net is going about $16 a square foot and CAM is $550. When I looked at what you were saying yesterday, it looks like it's $17.88 per square foot. And so I just took the $550 CAM as a rough estimate, which would make $12.33 per square foot. But I thought you had said $10 a square foot, which would make CAM a little high. And again, I mean, I'm just thinking from a perspective of negotiations in here that I hope that we're aggressively, does Adam do that?
Well,
Not on this one.
Oh, okay.
we would do that. Just to clarify, $10 per square foot is what the owner would provide as a credit for the construction cost.
Oh, credit
So that's
for the
that number.
construction. Okay, that's
Their list was $12.75 per square foot, and then there was a $4, I don't remember the change, CAM.
I was so close. Okay,
So,
great.
right, well,
Yeah.
good. And obviously, that's something that's
Well,
we
this
would
is-
negotiate.
And then the term of the lease that we're talking, this is a windfall to the owner of that property. And we are a public entity, and I think that you can probably get it down more, that's all.
Well, we would certainly negotiate. That's, I'll go with what was listed so far, and, there's some costs that go into it, but, to the point we
You're
would.
much better off, and I don't know if they own other properties, but having vacant property costs them money in all of their properties, so.
We're just in our discussions now. We don't want to go too far down the road. We obviously want to present this to you and, make sure that conceptually you think it's the right direction to go.
Anyone else?
Mike, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
Thanks. So, a couple questions. First, Joe, you said there would be no increase in employees?
Not as a result of moving this, no. Same people working today that would be working then, just in a different location.
Okay. And what's the length of the lease?
So obviously we negotiate that, we'd probably start with a 5-year, and then we would probably have renewal options on top of that.
Okay, I guess, so I'm thinking of, it seems like the county is outgrowing their buildings. If we have, we have storage in different places, we have the ROE in McHenry, you said the courts are on Russell, and now we have this. And I worry that we're paying different leases in different places and having to maintain all that. Is there a thought of possibly purchasing a building somewhere so we could have it all in one area? It might reduce cost and we would have total control over the whole building.
One of the options we looked at early on in this discussion was adding on to the county administration building. And that is something that can be done based on the cost, and about a 7,000 square foot addition was in excess of $4 million. And then you have the timing. So you're looking at, a year plus, or actually even beyond that for construction. And that would be a bit of a challenge. So it wasn't really as cost effective in that longer term solution, something we would own, maintain. We could build to our standards, have our building controls in place. Yeah, we understand that. You mentioned we have the ROE office, but that's separate. The health department has the storage facility in Lake County. That's only temporary. That's going to actually move back to the archives once we have that built out. So that's going to go away. And that really comes into sometimes a challenge as we grow. Our needs grow with that, but sometimes there has been areas of consolidation. Not too long ago, we had a building in front of the government center called Annex B, and that building had to go, and we've shoehorned those operations in. So it's something we're always looking at, and I appreciate that you're thinking in those terms too, because there's the short-term solution and then what's best in the long run, and I appreciate we all think in that term.
Thank you.
Right.
Pete, you're muted.
I think Kelly's somewhat saying some of what our respected facilities manager Tom Burrows said, is that it's not either or. This is a 5-year solution. 5 years will be done in a hurry, and during that time we can be a little bit more thoughtful about how we might add on to this building. What is exciting about this is that we could have it ready for the presidential election the end of next year, and have Joe have staff in there next summer. And if we build something, we're 2 years from being able to use it.
Another consideration and another reason why we went with a very simple and austere plan is that the nature of elections is changing. It seems to be moving more towards vote by mail, which would mean that our storage requirements for the equipment would go down considerably. So we may find ourselves in a situation where we don't have those needs in 5 to 10 years. So at that point, it might make sense to build onto this building a smaller addition to house what we have.
Right. 2 questions. The first is this going to affect your footprint here in this building? Are you going to reduce your footprint so that it might be available for something else here or not?
So in this building, in the basement where we currently have storage, that would become available. In the office space, no, that wouldn't change.
Okay, thank you. I think that it's a very good idea to separate and almost, I hate to say isolate, but to kind of consolidate, I guess I would say, to one location. And I think this is great because of accessibility. And so that's my next question is, to what degree do you believe the demand is to have public accessibility to the functions?
So during elections, I think obviously it would be great. We're going to have accessible ground level floor space for a polling place, for the central polling place for the county and the earliest open polling place, which is something we don't have here, and that we rely, unfortunately, on the elevator, which, as I mentioned, is unreliable. And honestly, it's for those that have mobility issues, it can be a challenge sometimes getting up the elevator and all the way down the hall to this end of the hall. And so we find ourselves oftentimes bringing ballots out to their cars and that sort of thing to accommodate them. So it would certainly make that situation better. And then in terms of being able to bring people in and show them the process. For those who have concerns about the process, they could see it as it's happening, but also at a safe distance where they can't interfere with it. You know what I mean? So they can look through the window, they can see what's happening, they can talk to us, but they couldn't change or touch any of the materials.
I think for those reasons, it's very, very appropriate, and so I'm very supportive. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Just one final thing. This is not a done deal with the city of Woodstock yet either. So they have a voice in this, and so I don't want to. It's a concept at this point, so we'll be working with them on that. Thanks.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Ray, if you have questions.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Next is 11.1. Carrie?
Okay. Okay, good morning. Do you want to talk about the jail first, or do you want me to go through my stuff?
Why don't you go through your stuff first and then we'll do jail
Okay.
last.
So first thing is I emailed these to you guys last night, and then Kathy printed out some big sheets so they're easier to read. This is the final list of supplementals, and I have the ones highlighted in orange that have either changed or been added since the last time this list was sent out. A lot of it's just kind of some last minute housekeeping items. So I don't know if there's questions on that. And then the other sheet is everything that has changed since the budget has gone on 30-day review. So these will be the adjustments that the chairman will read in with the new amended ordinance.
And does this take into account, there's a couple of resolutions on that we're just approving?
Correct, and there's also a resolution that, yes, that will be approved in November.
Right.
So that's why I have them marked like with the X's, because
Yeah, mark with the X's.
because I don't know the resolution numbers.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay,
So that's
got it.
just meaning that they're on the November agenda at the same time.
Right, got it. Okay, thank you.
May we make comments at this point?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to point out, so that it doesn't go unnoticed, that at Valley High, they were looking at the need for a zero gravity track for physical therapy at a cost of $200,000. And because of technological changes, and this is just huge, they've been able to identify a $6,000 much better alternative that allows us to be mobile and save their space, whereas the other one would have had to have been a permanent fixture that didn't have any mobility to be utilized across areas. So that is huge and really well done. That was at like $194,000. So covers the steamer.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
So then one thing quick, I just want to share because, you know, I always like my opportunities. To show off open book. So this will be quick. On the county's webpage, there is a link which takes us to open book. And so sometimes, you know, I look at other counties' budget documents and, you know, I obviously have a very good understanding. And sometimes it's even a challenge of like, what are we talking about, or.
Thank you.
So this new tool within Questico Open Book, it's called a Spotlight, and Jeremy and I were able to kind of go through this probably in like an afternoon and put this out, and I wanted to just highlight it because I think it has a lot of the same information that you see in these huge budget documents, but it's much easier for people that maybe just want to find something, one thing specific, or, you know, be able to read it, and visually it looks much better. So I just wanted to point that out, that this is out here now, and this is the numbers that are on the 30-day review, in case anyone has questions. So we just have the letter, talking about some of the big changes. One is my favorite graph, where it shows the county's portion of the total tax bill. And then you guys can go through this, but I just wanted to show you quick. And then down here is the actual numbers. So this just shows very high level by object level 1, but then the visualization right below it, if you open it in a new window, you can look at by fund, you can look at it down to the lowest level that we budget for. So if you want to just start with fund, but then it goes to department, to object level 1, and then to the most detailed that we have is the main account. So I know you guys are familiar with all this, but just for, I think this is.
For all those listening at home, you want.
Yes, that want to like flood the website to check out Open Book. I just think it's, you know, we continue to have these new tools available to us, and as we get better using them, I think just being able to help the public understand some of this stuff, you know, we get so in the weeds, it's easy to forget that it can be confusing. So
In my email to staff on Monday morning, we included a link to this, and I actually did get a couple staff members email me, so at least a couple of people looked at it. It's awesome, Carrie.
thank you.
Carrie, I've shared it publicly on social media.
Okay, good.
Thank you. And some likes and thank yous.
I think it's a really good tool, and you know, I hope that more people use it. I know the general public isn't quite as excited about government finance, but
Well, they can't say they didn't know.
that's right. That's right.
Oh, yes, they can. And yes, they will.
So that is all I have. If you guys don't have any questions on these, if I may have more.
Thank you.
Okay, so regarding the potential revenue from the jail contract and expenses, what is your current plan to account for that in the budget?
So we've talked a lot about this, Pete and Sandy and I, that, you know, we're kind of staying with our plan of we don't budget for the unknown, because as you can see in the intergovernmental agreement, it doesn't increase revenue, but it also doesn't increase expense. So we were gonna kind of revisit this, as the sheriff said, maybe in 3 months when this is ramped up. We don't have any ideas of what revenue would be or expense.
As we've been sitting here, I texted the Lake County Administrator that the agreement passed out of finance, and it's going to be on the agenda when we post the county board agenda later today. And his response was, you know, we're still heading that direction, but but we have several issues to talk through with departments that are involved. So there could be some adjustments here in some way, shape, or form. We just don't know, and I don't know how we budget for the unknown.
Well, okay, so I guess, so here's the only thing that I would ask, and we can have a discussion in, you know, 3 months or whatever you want to have, but I feel like we need to create similar to what well, actually not similar, because we didn't quite. I guess what I'd like to do is I'd like to isolate the revenue. So okay. I would like to be able to, accounting-wise, create a subset of their, I don't care where you put it, but a subset in order to account for the revenue coming in. And then also, if there are expenses incurred because of this, whatever they may be, create a subset so we can isolate that segment of it. And because my concern is twofold. One, I don't want it just dumped into a bucket and then not really have a true idea of what we're talking about dollar-wise here. Because making a quick assumption that this does go into effect and Lake County does start transporting inmates here and we start seeing revenue from that, I'd like to be able to understand what that amount was and what our expenses over and beyond what our current expenses are truly were. So that we, as a board, as a committee, can then have a discussion about what are we doing with this increase in revenue. And, I'm a very big believer or proponent in, this shouldn't be for reoccurring costs because we know this is going to go away at some point. And that's and for those that weren't here, that was the issue that we got into with the ICE contract. We started relying on those revenues in order to fill everyday reoccurring expenses. And that became a problem when that suddenly got pulled away from us. And it wasn't even planned. It was simply state legislature passes a bill, it's done, right? So I don't want to make that same mistake again. I want to make sure that whatever revenue we are seeing from this, we are doing it for one-time costs or a project or whatever the board decides to do. But A, define it so we know what that amount is, and then we can talk, 12 months from now, what project we want to put that towards. But if we don't set things up properly initially, I'm afraid that will be more difficult to try and achieve.
Yeah, the revenue side is obviously easier to isolate, but there's some tools within D365, and I can work with the Sheriff's Office on separating out the expense.
Well, because we're approving a budget for them already, right?
But it does not include this contract.
Correct. And so that's my only point. My point is they have, and I wish Sandy was still here, but I want to make sure that they understand that we need to try and separate those things. So, naturally, if they have a sheriff, that's retiring and they're gonna, hire someone else on to replace the retiring sheriff, regardless of the Lake County contract, that's something that's happening internally, no big deal. But if Rob determines at some point in the future, hey, we are getting, 150 inmates, a day head count, and we do need to hire 3 more sheriffs to accommodate that, then I don't want that to go into his budget line item. I want that to be separated out. Very similar to how we accept grants right now, right? We accept grants, we accept the revenue stream in. If there's people tied to those grants, they're separated out, so when the grant goes away, those people go away. Type, thought process. So just be very cut and dry, clear on what the situation is.
Mike, it's a great suggestion. I appreciate it. I know that there's going to be some additional bedding expenses right off the bat. There'll be additional water and maybe some utilities, and obviously it's a little bit of food, and the medical contract I think can absorb it largely. But Carrie and I can sit with Sandra and work up a list of the expenses we would be anticipating, at least.
Okay. Go ahead, Teresa.
And I totally support that, because for those of us who don't remember the ICE discussions about if the county would put in the contract, it was never clear how much money was the ICE contract actually making, right? Depending on which side of the argument you were on, you were getting a different value from it, right? And then to make a point, one would say, oh, we're going to lose this money, and it wasn't necessarily money. The numbers, we can see as it played out, it wasn't as dire as the claims were made when the county discussed doing the contract. So I support this because it makes it really clear how much income you're getting, and also then where's the money going to be allocated to.
Okay.
I have a few questions, so bear with me. We're not increasing staff or brick and mortar to engage in this contract with Lake County, correct?
Correct.
And as of this point, we're not increasing any expense,
Okay.
based just on what's approved in the resolution and what's in the budget.
And
But
so,
that may be something we revisit in a few months.
so the associated costs that you'll be showing are things that when the contract goes away, the cost would go away, such as food, clothing, utilities for water usage or increased heat or
Yes,
things
or
like
increased
this.
staff. Yes.
Okay, so that's one thing. And maybe I don't want to be premature in my other questions. Are you going into anything further than this for today, right now?
I was not planning on it, no.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, when you look at what is posted right now in the budget, do you think that it's fair to say that our revenue projections, for example, the CBD revenue is conservative?
The cannabis revenue? You know, again, it's back to, there's some unknowns with that. And so we've increased it 50%, which I think is.
Granted, but
Yes.
with what we're projecting, do you believe it's
But it probably,
conservative?
we tend to be a little more conservative
Okay,
on the revenue side.
yeah, I mean, I agree. Do you believe that the revenue projections for interest is conservative? And that's a two-pronged question. That's just in general, but also with additional monies that we may be able to pull from our operating expenses to invest in the short term to increase our revenue for interest? I'm just saying, do
I
you think
think
it's
the interest,
conservative?
again, is a little challenging because, you know, last year at this time, if we would have, you know, projected the revenue that we see coming in
Right.
from interest. So I think we try to look at where we have been for this year and project it out. It does not take into an account investing additional.
Okay, but do you believe it's conservative, a conservative forecast on the revenue for interest?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, no, I think that's everything that I have on this. So now on the flip side, do you feel comfortable with the expenditures that have been forecasted where we have been, I'd say, conservative on the, we won't be understated on projected head count?
So the head count, I think, over the past couple of years has been a little more challenging with trying to decide how many positions are going to be open. So I think in the past, the strategy that we've taken where we look at the filled positions and then we look at some of the vacant positions, how long they've been vacant or so on. But then even in the filled positions, we hold back the merit and we also have an open position allowance because especially the big departments, they're never fully staffed for the whole year. So that has always worked out well for us. But through COVID, when we had, you know, an unusually high number of open positions, you know, we adjusted for that a little bit. In last year's non-departmental, about $500,000, we didn't budget, just kind of, you know, I don't like to do personnel as kind of just big chunks, but it seemed appropriate based on how things were running. But even now, as we're finishing 23, you know, we're starting to see more positions filled. And that's causing a little bit of trouble as we end 23 on some budgets where they're running out of budget.
Remember, that just happened today. We're adjusting the court's budget because we budgeted really pretty lean last year. And we did it last month with probation and court services because we don't budget for the worst case scenarios. We budget pretty lean.
Well, do you believe that the 2024 budget for projected personnel is lean?
I wouldn't say it's lean. I think it's more reflective of all the filled positions, that we had many more vacant positions last year. And the nice thing with doing the personnel budget within Quesica is we can get down to the monthly spend per employee, based on their grade or their benefits is a big one. So I think, again, as we learn the personnel tool, budgeting within Quesica, that helps us get very close. But again, it's still a projection, so it's hard when there's a lot of open positions or sometimes even when there's no open positions in small departments, then they run out of personnel because of the holdback. So it's kind of a balancing act, but I would say, the revenues are conservative, the expenses we can kind of zero in a lot better with the tools that we have.
Okay, and then do you believe, our reserves, our goal is to have our reserves at 6 months?
Well, the policy is to strive to maintain 5 months reserve. I personally would feel better if it was 6. And, again, because of some of the ARPA infusion into the county, the general fund has seen a strong reserve. But we've talked about that, and as part of the 2024 budget, we're adding some capital that we've pushed out to use up some of that excess reserve.
Okay. So I think that's it for, for now, for today. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Any other questions for Carrie? All right.
Kelly,
I do, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, sorry. I'm not looking at the screen, I apologize.
And my computer died when Sandy and Rob were here, so I didn't hear everything, but the expenses, I am, just like with the ICE contract and what Teresa said, we want to make sure that we have an exact count of what the expenses are so we can see what we definitely have as revenue or net income on this. We know what our revenue is. But the other things we have to keep aware of too, are we going to have to renegotiate contracts with the food service or with the healthcare or any of that if our head count increases? Because I know...
Sorry.
I know those contracts are depending on how many people we have in the jail.
Yeah, I kind of asked the same question, Kelly, and I think we'll be okay on the medical because I think the break point is 200, and we pay more when we go over 200 to 400. So if we stay below 400, we'll be okay. But the contracts are already negotiated. They know what staffing level or what average inmate levels or detainee levels trigger what sorts of staffing levels and what sorts of response for both the food service and the medical. You guys are obviously it's important that you're thinking about the expenses and I'm looking forward to having more discussion with Sandra about this, but I can tell you, they're thinking around, and don't hold me or them to this, but if an inmate is going to produce about $100 of revenue a day, when they factor in all the expenses that they're thinking about, most notably the transportation cost, the cost of running a bus over to Waukegan and having it sit all day and then come back and staff, that's expensive. So I think they're thinking around $30 of that $100 will be lost in our expenses. So it's a net of about 70. That's real loose numbers, but that's sort of what they're thinking.
Anything else, Kelly? Okay. EDC, I'm sorry I was not able to be at the dinner last night. Whoever was there, how did it go?
Oh, well, it was the largest attendance that they've ever had. And it was bittersweet because of Jim leaving the position, yes. And then Jean retiring, oh my gosh. She just turned 80 and she has just been such a stalwart in the community for her entire life. So there's a lot of intellectual property leaving the county. But with that, there's always the opportunity for new things and new ways to look at it. We just had some excellent businesses that were honored with the Champion Awards. And I think there's going to be a lot more membership and engagement with what's going on in economic development. So it's very encouraging, and it was fun.
How was the speaker?
It was fun.
Was it? Go.
Our colleague is being modest. Her company was actually nominated as a finalist in one of the champion categories, and so she's to be commended for that.
Thank you. Congratulations. One thing that came up was that, and talking to Cheryl also, was that McHenry County won the Gold Award from the Mental Health Institute of America or something like that. Okay, and which is a big deal. This is the first year that they've applied for it, and they got right to the gold standard, which I think the next level up and only a level above it is platinum. So they were able to achieve that goal within the first year. And it just, what I guess it gets to, and Cheryl can really talk to it more, is just policies in place to help with employee mental health and well-being and the resources that are available to them. So congratulations to staff.
I think that the EDC annual dinner is a lot like the COG dinners in a way. It's just so nice to be able to get together with large groups of people and to network and to have conversations about what's going on. I think that it helps to build certainly collegiality, collaboration, and a sense, I think, of progress that we are moving into greater opportunities in the future through that collaboration. So it was a great dinner. You were mentioned last night with gratitude by Jim, and so you know, I thought it was a nice gathering. Went well.
All right.
And I'll just a footnote or whatever, an exclamation point, to really see McHenry County in a global perspective, which we are. It's amazing. I've always said that, and it's true.
All right.
Actually, one thing I'll add on to the EDC dinner, and I had the privilege to attend, and I appreciate that, the sense of pride that our manufacturers have in being in McHenry County. So I get warmed by hearing that again and again. Every year we go, it's the same theme. So I really do appreciate that. Naturally, McHenry County, with Jim leaving the MCEDC and moving on, he's also the chairman of the Naturally McHenry County Board. I don't know if you're aware of that. So it's a double loss for the county. So he'll be leaving his role at Naturally McHenry County. Elizabeth Kessler, who is the Executive Director of the Conservation District, will be stepping in, providing that leadership. So we'll be in good hands, no doubt, but Jim certainly provided a lot of guidance and a lot of direction for National McHenry County, even through the rebranding, going from a Convention and Visitor Bureau to a destination marketing organization. So he's shepherded that transformational change, and we're still working on that. Part of that work is looking at our bylaws and structuring the organization to be more of a destination marketing organization. It's just a little different approach, a little different perspectives, different change of governance. So we're actively working on the bylaws to follow suit with that. So that's what we said.
Okay. Thank you. Shannon, were you intending to do the sheriff's transition audit today, or?
We can. I have a staff person here, but it'd be really quick, like 5 minutes. And if you prefer to wait, but.
Well, usually you put in your email, you know, I'm going to be doing, so you didn't, so that's why I didn't know what you wanted to do.
I was like, if time allowed, I didn't know how long your agenda was today.
Is there any other audits that you are working on that we should just do it next month?
We likely will present on the animal control and maybe another audit next month.
So you want to just do them all at that time? Sure.
I know Kathy might not be able to be there next month. She is part-time schedule, so she can take off today, but I should have confirmed further with you. But we can do it either way. There's not a timeline on this. I mean, it was a very important audit, not substantial finding.
Committee, what do you want to do?
I'm fine to do it. I
I'm
mean,
fine to
it's-
do it, yeah, I'm fine
It
to
sounds
do
like it's short and we're already here. I would hate to have her come back. but-
Okay. All right. Well then, so then I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss the sheriff's transition audit. Terry and Teresa, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.